So here we are at our Friday class for the Soul Path community, and we're going to talk about what's up with Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart. And this is basically a relationship astrology analysis. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit about them and what we know about them, but we'll let the astrology speak for itself. We'll let the astrology try to explain to us why these two have developed this apparently very deep friendship. And they're both very much in the public light these days, especially with Snoop Dogg rising to the position of an announcer at the France Olympics this year. And, the picture that I have in the background here is oil and water. In case you're not sure what that orange thing is, that's what it's meant to be, is the way oil and water don't really mix, right? The oil sort of slicks on top of the water. Maybe there's little bubbles, but unless you do like an emulsion, that they aren't normally of the same quality to blend. And that might be what we would imagine in our minds about these two people who have seemed very different to us over the years. Now, I wish I could have had more pictures of them, but I really try these days to just use copyrighted pictures that are free to use, or, in the system, Dreams Time, that, gives you authority and copyright. So this was the only picture that I could get of the two of them. However, if you go on Google and you search them, you'll see that they've been in various places together for quite a while, and especially the pictures in Paris. I mean, they were literally snuggling with each other. There was this great sense of chemistry and affinity between the two of them, and they're clearly comfortable. They're laughing and talking. And, for anybody who really doesn't know who they are, Snoop Dogg is a rapper. He's one of the founders of what's called gangster rap, going way back into the 70s and 80s. And, over the years, I mean, he was part of the Crips gang. He was a cocaine dealer. He was implicated in a murder, although he got off. It was his driver who had murdered somebody, or his bodyguard. Um, and he, didn't serve time for that, but he did serve a little bit of time here and there in prison. And yet, over the years, he has become quite a businessman, as many of the well-known rappers are. I mean, some of them, like Jay-Z, is like a super mega millionaire. He and Beyonce probably even billionaires at this point. I don't quite follow it, but it's not just from the music, but they develop products, right? They do clothing lines and alcohol, and whatever there is to build a business on. They are truly becoming business people. And Martha Stewart was kind of the, I don't know, the grande dame of perfection. She was known for her magazine, Martha Stewart Living. She had a television program where she wanted to show everybody the perfect way to cook things, the perfect way to peel onions, the perfect way to make a frittata, like whatever could be possibly perfect and detailed. That was her brand. And from that brand, she expanded and expanded, and she developed all kinds of products as well. Also cookware and towels and sheets and anything to do with having the perfect home. But she's got a little gangster edge in her as well. And basically, in about 2004, 2005, she served time both in prison for about 5 months, as well as ankle monitor after that for 5 months, home arrest, and a couple of years probation for insider trading. Additionally, in, kind of what I would say in the corporate world is a gangster move, when she wanted to publish a book, uh, her publishing company, which I believe was Time Warner, who published, her magazines and stuff, they didn't want to publish it, and so she bought the company for $75 million. I mean, it's kind of like if you saw the movie Crazy Rich Asians, right, where they're being racist towards these wealthy Singaporean people and not letting them into their hotel. And she gets on the phone and they buy the hotel. That is something that not many people can do. So she did that. One of the things I read is that Snoop, being, kind of that culture where um, testifying about other people, so-called snitching, is looked down upon. The fact that she did not do that about anybody that she was connected to in insider trading, she just took the penalty and served her time. That apparently gave him respect for her. So there's a little of the background. I had personally wondered if maybe she reached out to him when she knew she was going to prison, maybe needing protection or something. But apparently that all happened before they met. And the way that they met was that she had her people reach out to him to ask him to be on her cooking show. And that was in 2008. So he was on her cooking show. She taught him how to make mashed potatoes. The chemistry was really good. He came on her show again. They made a couple of very interesting videos over the years, like one that's sort of a spoof on Ghost with Patrick Swayze, where he's got his arms wrapped around her, and instead of pottery that Demi Moore was making, she's icing a chocolate cake, and they're icing the chocolate cake together. And that was a little video to promote a show that they were doing. But basically, although it started with just him being on a show here and there and having good chemistry in the kitchen and him really liking to cook, ultimately releasing his own cookbook, that they just became closer and closer friends, to the point that he has said straight out in an interview that he totally loves her. He really, really loves her. Uh, he's married, although many times with rappers and rock stars, there's an agreement about, having other relationships. So I wondered, because they seem so close, even though they are way different in ages. I wondered if maybe they're also lovers, but there's no definite talk of that anywhere that I could see. They continually get referred to as friends. But as we get to their composite chart, I definitely have something to say about their level of chemistry and intimacy. So I think that's a good background. She is really into dressage, and he was afraid of horses. One of the reasons that he was at Paris with her was to just be a support person to her, as they were connected to these horses. Um, and what else? I think, yeah, that's our starting point. They are supportive to each other. They have chemistry. They laugh and joke a lot, and clearly have a real relationship of some kind. So, okay, so here we are with the chart, with Snoop Dogg's chart in the middle, which means we're looking at life from his perspective. His chart, 0 degree Taurus. And luckily, I'll say, I had imagined that I would be doing this talk without having the birth times, because so often we don't have the accurate birth time of famous people. But both of them are rod and rating AA birth times, which means the astrologer who reported it had birth certificate in hand. It is the best, most reliable birth time. And we would, you know, wonder normally when we see somebody who has a 0 degree, 46-minute Taurus birth time, ascendant, which is 3/4 of a degree, not even 1 degree of Taurus. But I think if you watch him at all and you see that sort of laconic style he has, the laid back aspect that he's so well known for, that Taurus totally describes him. He does not have an Aries rising energy at all. When I'm looking at relationship astrology, even though I know we're going to go to Venus and the moon and Mars and Pluto and various relationship planets, the relationship houses as well, I do like to start with the nodes because that is the underlying soul energy of the person. And I want to know how a person's soul level wiring is connected to the other person's soul level wiring. Where do they have planets that are connected that indicate some kind of past life connection? But also every single lunar node oppositional pair of signs has certain features about relationship that are key to the person. Snoop comes in with a south node in Leo. So you see that down here, right on the cusp of the 5th house. We would read it in the 4th and the 5th. When someone has Leo south node, we would say they've been rich, talented, famous, successful, creative in past lives, and therefore they have a natural affinity for that again. Now, many times I find people with the south node in Leo literally have the specialness beat out of them as children. Like a lot of people do not like that kind of fiery, kind of brazen energy of Leo. A lot of little kids with Leo energy are running around going, look at me, I'm twirling, I'm dancing, I'm special, look at me, can't you see I'm special? And there are a good number of parents and teachers who want to say, no, you're not that special. Go be ordinary, get along with everybody else. Don't shine, don't stand out. So having that Leo South node can really get wounded and can evolve into narcissism. But if the person has enough consciousness, or if the person manages to heal in some way, this gives the person the ability to be successful, talented, and artistic. And we can see in the 4th house that it's part of his underlying emotional sense, so what he came in with, but also at the 5th house, when we read it into the actual house of creative expression, this is often what we might see with someone who just naturally becomes a performer, an artist, successful, and also someone who might be a hedonist. Okay, that would be one of what we call the shadow side of the south node in the 5th house in any sign, but especially something like Leo, that a person can just enjoy the pleasures of life. And, Snoop Dogg is well known for his cannabis habit. He is always seen with a blunt in hand, smoke billowing around his head. And except for a little bit of time when he decided that he was a Rastafarian, and supposedly he quit smoking for a while in order to elevate his spiritual energies. And he even changed his name for a short period of time it was a few years ago. For the most part, he is identified with the fact that he's pretty much always stoned. And then if he evolves, he is meant to evolve in an Aquarian way, letting go of image, letting go of the need to be special, and starting to do something that is more humanitarian, more connected to others, something that feels more authentic to him, to be a more authentic person. And I would say that in some way he is managing that when we see him cooking with Martha Stewart, putting out a cookbook. That's not really a hard rapper kind of image. He is really kind of moving beyond any kind of image that we might imagine for him. Now, the sun in Libra is what rules his south node. And for the ruler of Aquarius, we look first to the planet Uranus, which is next to the sun, although pretty wide conjunction. We might also look at Saturn as the traditional ruler, and the traditional ruler is in the second house of money and resources. So what might have worked against him in past lives is real deprivation for those in power and authority. Also unequal power balance, sixth house, life being maybe topsy-turvy, difficult. We see there's also Pluto here. Uh, People of the generation of Pluto and Uranus in Libra are actually here to bring about artistry, peace, harmony, and balance to the world. And that aligned with his sun would suggest that this is one of the things he's doing. Now, I know some may have judgment about him as a rapper and, the kind of crimes that he committed when he was coming up in this world. One of the things that I've been seeing since I've been, I'll admit it here, into rap and hip hop since the very beginning, since he was starting and, NWA and all of those early rap performers, is that the rappers, as they're growing up and maturing, many of them are changing radically and they are doing things to help the world. For instance, 50 Cent has Deepak Chopra as his personal meditation teacher, and, lives, a completely different life. uh, Dr. Dre, who is affiliated with Snoop Dogg, married, trying to keep his marriage together many years ago, really started to live a much more chill, non-crime life until it affected his sales so much that he had to, kind of reinvent himself and kind of bring on the criminal, persona again. Uh, and that was a really important and successful album where Eminem's song, about Dre was a big aspect. So, these guys, they have a persona that comes from the life that they're born into, where they're poor and they join gangs. But then when they're, 40, 50 years old, they may not be in the life anymore at all. They may be living a very different life. And we see him more and more doing that. And here in the obviously, as somebody who has a Leo sun ruling the South Node, he's very relationship oriented. And Libra, soul's purpose, Pluto, destiny, Uranus, how he's waking up to authenticity, definitely connected to his soul's purpose. Venus is the ruler, and Venus in Scorpio conjunct Moon and Mercury in the seventh house of partnering would suggest that he could have very significant partnerships with women. He's been married a long time. He's been married since 1997 to his longtime girlfriend. This friendship with uh, Martha Stewart has been going on since 2008. And it seems that he has many other strong, loyal relationships as well. Now, that's just the surface here, of course. But how does he see her? How does he get along with her? Why does he get along with her? Well, the first thing that I'll notice is down here at the bottom of the chart. Her sun is connected to his south node very tightly. When someone's sun is connected to your south node, this is a person who has been an important person in your prior lives. Maybe your father, maybe just a person with power who supported you, who helped you. And since we know that he was probably a person of power in past lives as well, maybe not all the way there, that this has been the role that she served for him. And you can see she's a Pluto in Leo generation baby boomer, Chiron in Leo, where she's had to work on a Leo wound of herself and a midheaven of Leo. So she shows up in the world with the Leo energy that he's attuned to on a soul level. This really gives them a lot in common and would suggest to me that in a way she is capable of supporting him and helping him and bring Leo light to him in this life. And I would say that the fact that he has been made more personable, being on her shows and hanging out with her, has kind of softened that scary, hard image that many typical people would have had of him. And that could be what led to him being asked to be an announcer for the Paris Olympics, where, that is a pretty mainstream job to hold, to be there and do that. And the two of them together, probably also made it seem more acceptable in some ways. Now, in other major connections, I would say that her ascendant in Scorpio, right there in the middle of his moon, Venus, Mercury, is excellent for chemistry. Uh, when he looks out in the world to the kind of partner he wants, he sees the way she shows up as strong, intense, uh, that kind of deep honesty that comes with Scorpio. They can connect on that level. At the same time, her moon in Sagittarius is a big picture moon, right? Her moon comes from the galactic center, which is a spiritual location. And it sits right on the edge of his ninth house of spirituality, belief, truth, and meaning. And so, where he's looking for his, spiritual beliefs here in the eighth house, where he wants something expansive, but also eighth house oriented deep, they are operating on both the Scorpio eighth house level and on the Sagittarian ninth house level. There can be humor with Sagittarius and sometimes kind of a dark humor with Scorpio. And it seems like when they banter, I was watching a few of their videos, that they definitely have the playful side, but there's a little sharpness to it as well. The other place where we see a really strong connection is her Mars in Aries with his Chiron and part of fortune in Aries. And interestingly, his part of fortune is in the 12th house. And here he gets benefits, fortune rewards from being engaged in spiritual path and doing something maybe that is pioneering. He has a lesson, in this life to believe that he can do what he wants to do. And Chiron in Aries says he is wounded in that regard, and it's opposite Uranus in Libra. And this is a common feature for people born around 1971. And it's like on both sides of the equation is this need to be free and to be authentic and to believe that you can do what you want. And here's her Mars, because she's definitely part of the establishment, maybe a little wounded about it because she went to prison, but she went to prison, she came out. The reality is many people in business do insider trading. Most of the Congress, Senate, and now we see even the Supreme Court do insider trading. So, she was just one that got made an example of. But she is, considered mainstream on a business level. And she has probably been quite supportive to him in becoming more of his true self in whatever ways he wishes to. It's also relevant that her Jupiter is in his second house of money. Then her vertex, which is about fated connections. Even Saturn, where we see that there can be karmic connections, they are within the realm of a conjunction, even though they're out of sign. So I was wondering, when I was realizing that they were basically 30 years apart, if they would have the same nodal structure, um, not nodal structure, I'm sorry, Saturn structure, Saturn sign. And they're close. They're very close, but again, slightly different, slightly out of sign. So that's how they relate when we're looking at it in that direction. But if we turn it around and we see her chart in the middle and we put him on the outside, of course, we'll see some of the things that we saw, looking at it reverse. Because here, let's start with her ascendant in Scorpio. And we see that uh, his Scorpio planets, we get the visceral feel that how he relates, Venus, how he loves unconditionally, the moon, how he thinks and speaks, all Scorpio, all connected to her self-image and the way that she presents herself, how people see her. People see her as powerful but wounded, powerful but maybe not trustworthy because she, did something that was illegal. And we see that his planets that are about his destiny are in her 11th house of long-term plans. And here we see something very potent and powerful. She has South Node in Pisces. So she is coming into this life from many lives where she has given up her ego, either for spiritual reasons or sometimes for hedonistic reasons, drugs, alcohol, relationship, losing oneself is the karma of the Pisces. What comes with it on the positive side is a great deal of spiritual, intuitive energy. Person with South Node in Pisces is not really connected to the ways of the world, connected to a certain kind of higher consciousness, even if that higher consciousness or that bliss state is reached in ways that are, kind of more about addictions and dependencies. So here we see fifth house as well. And part of fortune, what brings her fame, money, fortune, in that fifth house, which is creative expression. And so here she's teaching cooking and she's building companies and, she just knows how to make things special. But she too has had her past life experiences of creativity that maybe also went over the top in terms of hedonism. And whenever you're looking at a South Node in Pisces or a South Node in the fifth house, you especially want to look at the ruler so that you can kind of discern, like, did the person lose themselves from drugs and alcohol, or did they lose themselves, giving up human life and just being an ascetic monk or something like that. So we want to look at both rulers. We're looking at Neptune, and specifically here, the ruler of the South Node is at the North Node level. So this Neptune in Virgo is what worked against her, is what kept her in her Pisces karmic problems. And then we have Jupiter as the secondary ruler, and it's in the 8th house of wounding, death and destruction, illness. That's actually, I should mention that is like the third way that one can have Pisces karma, is from having a great deal of illness. The fact that the Neptune is in Virgo, which can be about holistic healing, can be about the need to be healed and to be healthy. I would just surmise on her past life level that part of her South Node issue was some kind of drug or alcohol dependency, and part of it was then illness that related to that. That would be my way of, talking to her about it if I was speaking to her. And I believe, I don't know, how much alcohol she has at this point in time, but she does say that, she doesn't partake of smoking dope with Snoop, but she gets kind of a contact high or just sometimes too high just being around him. But it seems like she is somewhat careful at this point in time about how she's taking care of herself. And this shows that she's doing her Virgo work in this lifetime to be more discerning, to be out there working. She's definitely a hard worker. The Virgo stellium, 10th house career, 11th house connecting to the community, to people. And we have a pretty strong skip step here with the vertex in Jupiter, where particular relationship that's deep and kind of maybe an expansive, belief-centered way of looking at things helps her navigate between Pisces and Virgo, the North Node, as well as the moon. The moon is another skip step. It's definitely a tight square. So she has to come into a deeper understanding of her emotions in a way that is belief-centered, connected to her truth. She has to live a life where her relationship with money has a certain level of, I would say, integrity with it in Sagittarius, where she is connected to her beliefs. And yet, the moon is ruled by Jupiter in the 8th house. There's a lot of desire to work in a big, expanded way with finances. So, when we think about doing insider trading to make a whole lot of money, she definitely made way more money than she ended up having to give up in fines. And she seems to have survived her prison time okay. So she was definitely learning money lessons. And now here she is, back out in the world, bringing perfection, absolutely doing North Node work. Now here we see another very significant aspect between the two of them. Juno, which is the asteroid of marriage, relates to Juno, who was incredibly loyal to her husband Jupiter, who was not a good husband in many ways, but she was loyal, devoted, connected, but also kind of a little jealous and conniving. There can be the shadow side of Juno, but to have their Junos connected is a very strong sign that, in a way, like they feel married, even if they're not. There's also, this connection with Neptune, the ruler of who she is on a soul level, and his Pluto. He could have been someone who was responsible for, kind of keeping her in her karmic condition before. And, they're working on transforming and bringing his power out into the world, her light, her Piscean creative energy, her imagination out into the world. Probably a million other things here that we could look at if we were continuing. Let me just see. We saw the Saturns that were connected, but here we start to see that they are in, from her perspective, 7th house of partnership. Saturns can be that committed bond, but they can also be that there's some blockage in the way. And, the blockage for them, Saturn most closely connected to Uranus, this would be a very unique and weird relationship in terms of the age difference, which can be Uranus in relationship. But it could also be that the fact that he is married provides a certain level of blockage from them, taking the relationship all the way, say, to being married. This is a strong sense of, the fate that is both connected, committed, but also there may be aspects of it that are stopped or slowed down. We also see that her Mars in Aries, right here in the area of work, she puts a lot of emphasis onto her work and always has. And his part of fortune and Chiron are there supporting her Mars. So, he brings her to a younger generation. He brings her, into a much more wild sense of who she is. And that probably is really appealing to her fundamental grand trine in fire. She is someone who seems conservative in some ways, but through association with Snoop, she's starting to show as a little wilder, a little bit more with it. The age that she's at this point in time, when she's like 83, um, that she is not acting or seeming what we might have once considered to be the nature of an 83-year-old. And finally, the composite. And this is, I think, where it gets really interesting. So the South Node representing the karma that they are working with in this lifetime, what they remember and they're bringing in as the gifts and maybe the challenge. South Node in Gemini conjunct Saturn and Chiron in the fourth house of family, but really right on the edge of the fifth house. So they're remembering themselves as family. They're remembering themselves probably as lovers with the fifth house, remembering themselves as creative beings when they were in fifth house lives. Gemini is very, very communicative, fast, bright, sparkly, interested. And with Saturn, there is a sense that the karma is deep, powerful, strong, and maybe they were in a leadership position in the time of their life together. Chiron represents they got somehow wounded about communication issues, and that their ability to teach and communicate is their greatest strength, and in a creative way, fifth house, but some part of them maybe didn't quite believe it. And the thing they have to guard against with Gemini karma is that they're too superficial, too glib, and they don't do something meaningful. So the opposite, North Node in Sagittarius conjunct the moon, suggests that they have a bigger picture, that they reach out to the community and to the world, that they bring something more meaningful to people. And especially with the moon, that they bring the heart. Now, when the moon is connected to the North Node, because the moon is considered a positive thing, we don't read it as negatively as some planets where we say, oh, this is what worked against you. We look at it and we say, the moon is what you longed for, but you couldn't get to. So we would say that in this life, when they were, kind of in some situation where they were communicating, teaching, writing, speaking, doing things that were creative, they really didn't get to express their love, their heart energy in a meaningful way. So they longed for that. They died not having that. And the death piece is very, very strong here because the Mercury is the planet that rules the South Node. It is in this big stellium in Virgo, and Pluto, the planet of death, on the edge of the cusp of the house of death, is a very tight square. Now, those of you who know the evolutionary astrology know that a planet square the nodes represents the skip step. Pluto, the planet of transformation, of fundamental wound into power, integrity, and honesty, can indicate that the challenge, the reason that the person didn't get to the North Node, was literally because they died, because things were going very, very badly. There was corruption, there was betrayal, there was evil. And I would interpret that for Pluto in general, but at the eighth house cusp with a stellium in the eighth house, the sun, which represents the identity and the power of the relationship, is in the eighth house, and it's with the asteroid Juno. They were married, they were connected, they were known for their voice, they were connected to their beliefs, Jupiter. They were powerful, and it was all going really, really badly. One of the things when the karma in a relationship is eighth house is that you know that the two people developed a great deal of trust in each other because everything around them could not be trusted. And the Virgo also gives them this great sense of affinity, trusting, believing they were doing the healing work that was needed at that time. We see that they also have Venus in a trine to the south node. So in the ninth house, remember, a trine or a sextile to the nodes indicates that they thought that planet was supporting them, but really it led to their problems, their folly. So they thought either their relationship or the relationships they were in with those who were in religious or philosophical power, that was like good for them, but it really was what contributed to them ultimately dying and not really getting to their goal of sharing their unconditional love with each other, the moon, and with the world, 11th house. There's a lot of idealization and creativity as well, with Neptune here in Libra, almost at the 10th house cusp. And we also have Mars in Pisces opposite the stellium in Virgo. And Mars represents aggression, violence. Pisces, something maybe that's hidden, maybe something that's connected to creativity, or again, we're always attuned to drugs, alcohol, losses on those levels. So there's something here about money and resources that was also, out of integrity, hidden, not to be trusted. And so they have a very strong karmic story. The other piece that ties into the karmic story by trine sextile is Uranus. So they thought their partners, who were also Uranian beings, unique, different, maybe revolutionary, that they were supporting them. But again, in the end, it didn't work out. To me, this is the chart of a couple who were maybe involved in some kind of revolutionary group. We see that the rising sign, Aquarius, also the sign of revolution. The partners are really revolutionary with Uranus in the seventh house. So involved in something revolutionary, creative, they're teaching it, they're bringing it forward. And, in the end, things go very, very badly. And when they meet again, like when you've had this kind of really hard life, when you meet again, you are like, oh, wow, there you are. Like, I thought I'd lost you, and now you're there. And there's a desire to hold on and not let go. And Snoop has said they're going to be friends to the end of life. There's like, in his mind, there's no question about that. In this life, so that's all the past life history and kind of what it brings to them. But in this life, communication is likely to be easy when they focus on what they're doing out in the world and making a difference, meeting the public, which the moon is the public, the 11th house is humanity. When they bring those things to the public, it goes well. And what are those things? Well, Jupiter rules the North Node, and it's in Virgo, and all these planets in Virgo. She's known as the Queen of Perfection. She wants to teach people how to do things perfectly, like how to make mashed potatoes perfectly if you watch that little video on YouTube of her teaching him how to do it. Uh, as they keep going, I mean, I'm sure from this first time period where they did the French Olympics together, there will be other events and other uh, ways that they can maybe contribute to changes in the world that they will do together, because this chart wants to keep making a difference in the world. They want to keep making money together. Yes, they're probably really careful about who they get involved with, but overall they are here to do some good work in the world together. And neither one of them is a perfect person with a perfect history or past, but it appears that at this point in time, that they have some work to do in our world.